Tell me when you're streaming. You did? Okay, because I haven't seen it yet, so. Yeah, and I'm not showing, but I could be up to 20 seconds behind. There we go. Yeah, I see your graphic. I just mute all your program, period. Go ahead, Mike.
Welcome to our Grizzlies Summer Cocktail Hour. I'm Michael Wallace. The event we have here is presented by Something Inked. For all of your promotional needs, visit SomethingInked.com. And for the next hour, I'm going to be joined by Grizzlies President Jason Wexler as we jump into a number of different topics. Obviously, this is a challenging time. It's an interesting time. It's been an off season that none of us pretty much expected, but we've all persevered through it. And it looks like there's still a lot of things that need to come together, but the NBA has proposed a return to play plan, and we'll jump into that and more, plus take some of your questions. I'll have some of your questions for Jason Wexler, as well as at the end, before we get to the end, I want to show you what's up for grabs here. And it is a nice, beautiful travel bag here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but if we can get this thing given away, I'm sure we will. If not, I'll be gladly taking it home for myself. Hopefully it won't get to that point. Actually, we're going to give that bag away from Something Inc. It's a co-branded bag from the Grizzlies and Something Inc. for your travel purposes. Let me bring in Jason Wexler here. Jason, thanks a lot for joining us. This cocktail hour is a little different from what we normally do. I remember a few months back we did this with Coach Taylor Jenkins as he was taking over his job, and one of the youngest coaches in the league has come in and helped this team grow and progress under a really, really encouraging season what we've had so far to this point. We have a lot of people on the call right now following this. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I want to thank our Grizzlies partners in the community, our business partners, also our 365 MVP members as well as some of the most devoted fans in the entire NBA also joining us on the call here. But first and foremost, Jason, how are you? I know it's a critical time out here in our community, but hopefully you're safe and healthy with your family. How have things been going the last couple of weeks for you?
Thanks, Mike. Thanks everybody who's I don't know if it's tuned in, listening. I don't know how you phrase it for where we're at in the world, but appreciate the question. Everybody is doing well, thankfully, and hope everybody who's out there viewing is safe and doing well. And appreciate everybody dialing in. The amount of support the organization's received through this incredibly unusual moment in time from our fans and our sponsor partners is greatly appreciated.
We're in a situation where I said before, this is our summer cocktail hour. Normally we do this in person. The economic and the societal changes have allowed us from COVID-19 to stay at home, safer at distance. Social distancing, we're doing it in a different format, but you're still going to get the same amount of information and insight from the Grizzlies that you always know that you can get from Grind City Media and Grizzlies.com. I'm looking forward to sharing this hour with you here, Jason, as well. And these are, hopefully you have your cocktail, because that's part of the cocktail hour. Normally, if we were in person, there would be a selection of cocktails to choose from. So if I don't have mine, Jason doesn't have his, be sure to take yours and remember to drink responsibly, even in a virtual format here.
Jason, I don't drink till after I talk anyway.
Is that right? We'll find something. We'll find something to help you out there. Jason, we can get into a number of different things here, obviously, but first and foremost, I wanted to ask you, how have the Grizzlies as an organization and our partners worked together during these challenging past few months as we've dealt with some of the safety concerns with COVID-19 and some of the other issues that have gone on in our society? How have our partners worked together with our organization through this time?
It's a good question, and it's really, it's such a unique moment. I guess I'll kind of work backwards chronologically. In terms of the protests in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, we just, that's not really a partnership moment. That's really just a organizational moment of, introspection and try and figure out, who you are and how you can help. Our organization has always tried to be an organization that takes action in the community, that, the press and the PR that sometimes comes with, doing good deeds is nice, but that's not why we do it. We really always try and focus on the actions we take. And so, we really tried to live up to that in terms of what we wanted to do initially going forward, which is why we're developing an educational repository online that we're working on from all the compelling dialogues we've had around the MLK celebration games, symposiums, and conversations that hopefully can be a tool. We've seen how much sports has led the way in the conversations that have taken place in the last few weeks, and we have a whole history of that here that we want to be able to share. Mentoring has always been a big focus of our organization and a way we've impacted the community. So we're in the process of shifting that whole experience to a virtual experience. But we're also looking to try and create a safe space for some of our mentors and mentees to have some of the important conversations that need to be had right now. We're working with the Coaches Association. They've already reached out on the actions they want to take, and Taylor was very supportive of their strong statement. And then we just kind of looked internally as well, like what else can we be doing? We're trying to find, new resources to help our staff go through this. We've got, a diverse and young staff, and a lot of them moved to Memphis to take jobs with us. So they've been kind of stuck in their apartments alone and dealing with a lot of stuff. We're trying to be supportive, but we also, came up with a new concept that is we're going to create a new class of paid time off so that our employees can vote. In the law, according to the law in Tennessee, you're required to give time off for people to vote that's paid. But, unless you have a special category, that might be something that people feel like they've got to use vacation time or other PTO time or sick time to do that, or they might just have a manager who nudges them to say, hey, can you do that after hours? And we wanted to be clear that, our organization supports everybody's right to vote. So we created of paid time off specifically to be used to vote in local and national elections. And then moving kind of backwards from there, where we have been able to kind of work with our partners and create a good dialogue is in response to COVID-19. So many of us as organizations had to immediately transfer our entire business to a work from home environment, which was something that, on March 1st seemed inconceivable, but, by March 16th, we were in full swing. And, appreciate the thoughtful, honest dialogues we've had with our partners throughout that time. We appreciate the patience our fans and our partners have shown as we, and the NBA especially, have tried to figure out how we push forward. And really that's, what the focus has been, is just trying to be as forthright as we can be, share the information that we have. And I think everybody kind of understands that, the information is, uncertain in a lot of these situations, and that, we're going to do the best we can to share it. And everybody's been, it's been a really good and positive working relationship across the board.
Jason, the organization has been forthright from the very start about this in terms of going beyond statements and actually taking stands and having action behind some of those statements. You alluded to a lot of those things, from the voting initiative, obviously with the PTO there, obviously the mentoring, and myself and Elliot Perry and so many other guys within the organization is a part of that every single day and every single step of the way. As you look back, and now we're at a point in the calendar, today I believe is June 11th, exactly 3 months since the NBA officially suspended the season and went on hiatus. As you look back over the course of those 3 months, just to follow up on what you suggested there, what do you remember from that day and that time, and how difficult has it been to sort of navigate and adjust on the fly to so much?
It's one of those things where it was such a remarkable moment, just a weird conflux personally and professionally. My daughter was spending the semester in Barcelona, and we were overseas visiting her the weekend before the NBA shut down, and my wife and son were still there. And at the same time, the situation was going on with the Utah Jazz was when the announcement was made that folks weren't going to be allowed back into the country after 24 hours. So we were kind of juggling a bunch of things personally. Fortunately, everybody got back home safe and sound. from my family, but it was just this, weird, hyper real moment and situation. And then you immediately kind of go into emergency triage mode. Like, how do we deal with this as an organization? How do we communicate effectively with our key stakeholders and partners internally and externally? And there really was sort of a rallying moment for a good 4 to 6 weeks where everybody just like, okay, we're digging in, where we get this, we're able to be a part of that. Then it took a lot of just thoughtful management, like I'm sure a lot of folks have been through with their companies. Once it started to the newness of the situation and the communal impact of all of us kind of pulling together wore off a little bit, and it was a little bit more of, all right, well, now how long is this going to go? And that's where it's been great to see everybody step up yet again in terms of internal and external communication and keeping that momentum going, and realizing that this was just unusual circumstances, and everybody's going to have to kind of step up and do a little bit more, a little bit better, a little differently in ways that they hadn't foreseen. It's certainly been challenging, but it's if you had told me on March 1st that, hey, in 2 weeks, you're not going to see anybody from the office for 3 months functionally, what's the business going to be? I mean, we're way, way, way better than I would have projected, if you had just asked me that question. So I think when we get some time and distance from this, hopefully we can look back and, realize how much all of us stepped up, and, that we got a lot of good things accomplished in a really, troubling time.
Establishing lines of communication is always important in any time, but especially during a pandemic as we try to run business operations. You talked about how important it was to communicate with the business partners and the community partners right off the top. We've also communicated, made it a priority to communicate with our season ticket members, MVP 365s, and our fans. How can that process, what's the next step sort of in that process to continue that partnership and that communication as we navigate from this point forward?
Yeah, I think it's just the continuation of using all the tools that are now out there. Hopefully everybody's got a cool background like I do, and you can, I've set up now on Skype, Teams, Zoom. I've had the arena one, change it up every so often to keep it interesting. Fortunately, there's going to be a constant flow of information because there's so much that's still undetermined about the rest of this season and next season that it's going to create natural touch points and natural conversations along the way. So, we're not holding anything back. I'll be amazed how often, we find out stuff, through the media too. So, I think as that kind of, continues to go on, as we figure out more and more about how 1920 is going to finish up, as we gain more and more knowledge about 2021, it's going to create a lot of natural touch points, and we'll just keep that communication rolling forward. But it's a little bit more scheduled, it's a little less random, and it's certainly not in person for the time being, but, hopefully it's as effective in its own way.
This is the Grizzlies Virtual Summer Cocktail Hour. I'm Michael Wallace with Grind City Media, and we're continuing with Grizzlies President Jason Wexler on a large number of topics, and we're just getting started, and I'm gonna get to some of your questions as well too. Jason, you sort of alluded to where we are right now in terms of wait and see mode with the NBA, the proposal that the Board of Governors and the Players Association have discussed. Nothing is finalized or formalized as of yet. There's still several hurdles to go between now and when something is resolved with the return to play process. But from what you've seen and what you understand of the competitive format, what does that mean for the Grizzlies? The Grizzlies had the 8th best record in the Western Conference, 3.5 game lead for the final playoff spot in the West. Going into this proposed format, what were your thoughts on how it shook out and where it stands for the Grizzlies at this point?
Yeah, it was certainly worrisome for a little while there because there was a lot of rumors and some of them were not so beneficial to our situation. But, ultimately our point of view was you had to give credit for the 3.5 game lead we built up over 65 games, which is roughly 80% of the season. And, we didn't get too worried along the way because it would have been so counter to everything the NBA has already done to just, throw that out, right? Like, that's just not how they've ever operated. So, there's a lot of people lobbying, there's a lot of media folks, tossing out their best ideas. It's hard to know, what's a reflection of reality and what's not. But, the NBA did as good a job as they could, keeping us looped in along the way without, tipping their hand. But ultimately, what they came up with, it accounts for the 3.5 game lead we built, right? Like the structure is fair enough in that regard that, we feel like the work we did was acknowledged, and, given that the work we did was acknowledged, we're okay with it. And, from a basketball ops mentality, it just, put it in front of us, we'll knock it down. Like, we're not going to work what a bunch of people Zoom call decided about, a structure and a schedule and whatever else. Like, just a bad mentality to get yourself into. So we're going to sit there and play whoever's in front of us and go beat them.
I mean, I'll be honest. I've said it from day one that this team obviously was ahead of schedule because they progressed and developed in a rapid fashion. They did it the right way under the coaching staff that came together. And the Grizzlies hadn't been given anything all season. So now they're not expected to be given anything, and they just want to go back out there with another opportunity to continue to earn everything that they've got from this point forward. When you look at how rapidly this team has progressed, and I'm saying rapidly because, again, they did it organically along their own path. It was major trade in the middle of the season, some injuries we've had to deal with, but each month it seems like this team has grown incrementally and gotten stronger, and there's still so much upside in this roster. How have you felt about the development over the course of the season from where it started off at camp up till March when it ended?
I mean, it's been exciting. Like it was, you always want to, you always have expectations for your own development that, may or may not conform to, what outside expectations are. And, we hold ourselves to extremely high standards here. But to be in a position where, we're playing incredibly meanul games with, I guess, now 8 games to go in the season. Proposed, exactly. It's not official yet.
There you go.
Right. But we'll assume for these purposes that it is. But
I'm just teasing you there, man.
Yeah, no, it's true. You always got to be a little cautious. But that's a great thing, and that's way ahead of where anybody on the outside would have predicted us. I mean, we beat the over/under predictions and by the All-Star break. So, it's kind of funny, seeing some of the national media clickbait reaction to like how this is going to play out, which is once again sort of underestimated what we accomplished all year long. But that's all right. Like, that's fine. Go underestimate us. We'll go do what we did all year long. And, the development of the team along the way has been terrific. I thought they did a good job of understanding how far they'd come, but how far they need to go at the same time. They never got satisfied with where they were at.
This is the Grizzlies Summer Virtual Cocktail Hour. I'm Michael Wallace, Jason Wexler there with us, Grizzlies president. It's presented by Something Inked. For all your promotional needs, visit SomethingInked.com. And as I said before, we have this wonderful travel bag that we'll be giving away. I keep showing it because I keep wanting to see it and remind myself how lucky someone's going to be to walk away with this. I travel with the Grizzlies all the time, and I don't have a bag that looks this spectacular. So I'm looking forward to making someone's night for winning that in our raffle.
I will say that brand, that Ogio bag, that is
Yes.
like the official brand that the players and the staff all use when they travel. So that looks pretty close to what an actual Grizzlies travel bag looks like for the team.
No wonder it looks so familiar, right? Like the only difference is, it'll say Brandon Clark up here or something like that. So I mean, this is a legit bag, and someone's going to be lucky with the OGO bag. Again, Something Inc. Great giveaway there. We're so thankful for all of our partners, all of our MVP ticket members, and our fans. I mean, that's just something that I miss. I was part of a Southwest Division Insider Reporter Roundtable, and one of the things that, and Jason, this is a surprise, I didn't even put this on the list here, but we're going to be putting out a piece on Grind City Media tomorrow, a poll taken among Southwest Division insiders, broadcasters, writers, reporters, talking about the arenas that they will miss the most because of how we have to go forward in Orlando at this point under the proposed plan. The Memphis Grizzlies came up 5 out of 5 in the Southwest Division.
Nice.
So yes, I mean the experience here at FedEx Forum, I've heard everything from obviously having Beale Street right behind us, to the hotel proximity, to the game day experience, the game night experience, the music, the food, the ambiance in the arena. That piece will be up on Grizzlies.com, Grind City Media tomorrow. So, hey, our fans are still always we know exactly what we're going to be coming back to when all this clears and all is said and done. But in the meantime, Jason, our players have to continue to get themselves ready for whatever happens with this NBA proposal. How important have the last couple of months been in terms of their conditioning, working with our performance team via virtual communication to keep themselves conditioned for what could be a ramp up to a training camp?
Yeah, our folks have done a great job. We're, everybody who's on this call knows we're a pretty low-key organization in terms of not putting everything out in the press, in terms of everything we're doing quietly behind the scenes to kind of keep folks in a good position. But, we had a lot of equipment delivered to our guys individually. We worked with them on, the kind of normal customized plans. We had day-to-day communication, used technology, and, really pleased with where everybody's at. We've had, lots of guys who've been in for the individual workouts that the league's allowed for the last few weeks. And, as we're gearing up, everybody's in as good a shape as you could reasonably expect given the restrictions that are on them. I mean, part of why it's going to be until July 30th or 31st, depending on the most recent reports, before there's a game, is that, there's still a difference between being in good shape and being in NBA game shape. And so, our guys have a plan mapped out. Our performance team is super organized, as is our coaching staff and front office, to really make sure that every single player is, in full game shape potential by the time the games start. So we understand where they're at. We understand the gap that we need to fill between now and then. With the protocols, we'll be allowed to do it as they, expand a little bit more and, have a high confidence level on that front.
I have several more questions for Jason, but I did promise you guys that we'll get to some of our partner questions, and we'll do that now. We'll pivot and get to a partner question before we resume, because some of these questions, frankly, are better than the ones I have, and you've heard all of my questions anyway up to this point from our conversations. But what has been the best thing, and this is from one of our partners here asking, what has been the best thing to come out of the quarantine break for both you personally and for the team?
For me personally, it was, my kids are 21 and 18, so they're kind of at a point where you don't expect to have them around all that much. And, they're pretty thoughtful adults, and having them, my daughter's back at school now, but, having them home for 2 solid months and getting to have dinner again every single night as a family when you're past the point where you expect that to happen. That's one of those things I think we'll all look back and, kind of remember fondly that, having that time together, that was unexpected. And, we realized, my wife and I, that, we were very thankful our kids were the age that they were at, because, we would have not have been, very effective homeschool quarantining, younger. So, we kind of feel fortunate to have that. For the organization and the players and staff, I think everybody realized how much they got along and how much they, love the game and how much they kind of like being a team together. That's not always the case, Mike, as you've covered the league a lot longer than I've been in the league. Really got the sense that these guys missed the opportunity to close out what they started and are thankful to have the opportunity to finish it on their own terms. And when you're going through the grind of the season, it's easy to kind of lose sight of that a little bit, especially when you start hitting that, February, March timetable, and the wear and tear on everybody's body and mind starts to really settle in. So, I think it's been great to kind of see how anxious everybody is to get back together and prove up what they've shown they can do so far.
Just talking to the players and the coaches and seeing a lot of the players, I mean, guys that have stayed in Memphis, I live right along Riverside, and you'll see a player and a coach every other day getting some conditioning in with just general residents and residents of the city enjoying Tom Lee Park. One of the things Jonas told me was that, he learned how to make sushi. He became somewhat of a sushi chef. Justice Winslow has talked about photography and taking pictures of the sunset and expanding his digital media talents there. We know Jaren Jackson Jr. has been deep into music and developing his more creative side. And Coach Jenkins and the staff, they foster that. They've challenged these guys to use their time to expand on other things outside of basketball while also remaining in shape. So that's been important too. So not only has that been an area of quarantine development for you and the team, but from these guys individually as well. Another question, and this is more strategic here, but how is Justice Winslow going to be worked in the rotation, Coach Wexler?
Yeah, this is one of those ones where you'll get one of those sort of mumbly, deferential answers from me. I'm going to leave that to Coach and his staff to figure that out. I'm as excited as everybody is on this call to see how that plays out, though. I think that's going to be it's kind of fun. The first wave of analysis about how things were going to play out, just kind of reading it, almost forgot that, we had acquired Justice because they talked about, Jaren and Brandon coming back, and, all of us were reading it going, you forgetting something, And then I think the last couple of articles have been like, oh, wow, yeah, they've got Justice Winslow too. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And it's also going to be really unique in that, Justice got to watch us for an entire month, so he really understands what we do. And now we're kind of getting a quasi-training camp to, work through a few things before, throwing him right into his first game. So, but at the same time, he was, common knowledge, he was ready to go the very next game we were going to play before everything shut down. So I would imagine he is raring to get out there, to have not been able to play because of an injury, and then have that, be one game away, and then have that one game take, 4 more months to get on the books.
Yeah, Justice is such an interesting case because not only is this a young man that was a top 10 pick in the draft, he already has a pre-existing relationship with so many guys on this team. He was a teammate of Grayson Allen when they played together and won a championship at Duke. And obviously this is a kid, I call him a kid because I remember I covered him when he was 19 years old coming into the NBA with the Miami Heat. My last year in Miami was his first year with the Miami Heat. And what you saw from him at the very beginning of the season was a dynamic player who can get you 20, 25 points a game, which he did against the Grizzlies in the season opener. And almost, he's basically a triple-double kind of threat because he can do so many things well. He can play on the ball and off the ball. And that's the kind of dynamic that again, Taylor Jenkins loves, because you can't just do one thing on this roster and expect to have an opportunity to play because it's so deep and talented. So I'm looking forward to Justice
that opening
as well.
night game too was that they threw Justice on Ja. Like that's who they defended him with. So
yes. They I remember talking to a lot. This is a guy just to sort of bring it full circle. Justice had the challenge of coming into Miami the season after LeBron James left. So he sort of was that plug-in at that small forward spot, and he was developed to be sort of what that position demanded from what LeBron provided. He also has a little bit of a Kawhi Leonard in terms of versatility and strength. This is a guy a lot of people are looking forward to playing with. And I was with the team in Portland the day the season was suspended. He had just come off the practice court, did a 5-on-5 workout, and was so much looking forward to that next game against the Trailblazers. So yes, he's going to be raring to go. And going back to that, when you look at Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant and this group, this young group, I looked it up. The Grizzlies have 11 players on the roster who are between 20 and 24 years old. So that youth and that energy is there, including Justice. Talk about how much excitement this team is generating now, and also what this could potentially mean in terms of developing this core as we move forward into the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's so exciting is that, we're building for the moment currently, but I think we're building simultaneously for the long haul. I always kind of still bring my fan perspective to it. And one of the things that, is always kind of frustrates me a little bit about the NBA is there aren't as many good rivalries as there should be. But if you look at the Southwest Division, and you look at us and New Orleans and Dallas, like those are going to be some amazing, fun, heated rivalry games for years to come on all fronts. And, I'm looking forward to, what that means for, our fans, for us as an organization, the challenge it puts forward. We know we're going to have to be on our toes, right? And I think that's a great thing. And, we've shown this year that we're, ahead of where people thought we were. And, we look forward to the challenge of keeping that pace of continuing to be ahead of where people think we're going to be for years to come.
Yeah, to your point, Jason, I mean, the Southwest Division is one of the few divisions in the league where all 5 teams are going to be competitive in this 22-team field. You know what I mean? So you look at that. Luka Doncic in Dallas, you mentioned Dallas, Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, 2 guys that are still within that 20 to 24 age range. You look down in New Orleans, obviously, with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson and those young guys, Lonzo Ball. So this is going to be a fun division. I remember 2011, I want to say, all 5 teams finished above 500. And then a couple of years later, all 5 teams were among the 8 that made the Western Conference playoffs. So traditionally, this has been one of the strongest teams, and the Grizzlies are right at the forefront of that sort of reset with the next wave of the future is going to look like. As we move on, Jason, and again, I've enjoyed this virtual cocktail hour presented by Something Inc. For all your printing needs, please visit SomethingInked.com for all of your printing needs. And again, we want to thank them and for their sponsorship and being presented sponsor of our virtual summer cocktail hour here. This has been a lot of fun, a lot of information. Hopefully you guys have been entertained and informed as well. A couple of more questions here, Jason, and then we'll let you go for the night. We've talked about a little bit, I know the schedule is still sort of taking shape, the league is still working on it, but what impact has the pandemic had in terms of the revised NBA calendar as it relates to the draft and free agency as we move forward? We're sort of resetting and pushing some of those things down the line a little bit.
We don't really know fully yet, right? So, we've heard some approximate dates for the draft. I think they've got lottery dates out there. They've said they expect if there's a Game 7 of the NBA Finals, that would be October 12th. So if you just kind of mentally shift everything 2.5 to 3 months, it looks like it's going to be a really busy end of October from the perspective of draft and free agency. But at the same time, like in order to have some of those things, you've got to figure out what cap and tax and those numbers are for next year. So there's a lot to be determined in the coming months before some of that stuff takes place. So, it'll be really interesting to see when the season starts next year. We don't have a date yet, which we appreciate everybody's patience for the season ticket holders and sponsor partners who are on here. And understand that. And, I think everybody's reading the articles and has a sense of the revised timeline. But, we're still learning when some of that stuff's going to be. And, we'll share officially when we know. But it looks like it's going to be, interesting to start a couple of months later next year. And we'll see what the impact of that is. But, we're excited about those possibilities. We take new changes as a challenge. So, we're already have multiple different plans we're working on so that we can adapt on the fly depending on however the coming weeks and months play out. The one thing I will say on the basketball ops side is, our folks have not taken any time off. They've treated their draft prep and, all of their prep work for the off season as if it was normal. They've just done it through Zoom calls and done a ton of film review and, done all of their prep that they would do for any other draft, all the way through nonstop. So, we're not the kind of organization that's going to look for, reasons not to do something. We're going to look for new ways to do it if, there's a change in circumstances. So, we feel good about where we are from a preparation perspective for whatever gets thrown at us in terms of off-season schedule.
Jason, to that point, what are 1 or 2 best practices? I mean, obviously we have a lot of partners in this community and beyond the region that we work with here. Many of them are on this call here. You're obviously at the head of an NBA basketball franchise. There's only 30 of these in the world in the NBA. But what are 1 or 2 best practices as a leader of an organization trying to navigate a company through so much uncertainty of this time? You talked about communication being one that's been a key, and also just patience and perseverance.
Yeah, and just can't emphasize the communication piece enough. Like, it has just been, a nonstop part of it, but it's got to be up and down and throughout your organization at every level. It can't just, you got to make sure it doesn't stop somewhere, in the middle. So we've been really, really diligent about trying to make sure that, we communicate as effectively as we can across the board. And you got to understand that, different types of communication land differently in this environment. As part of this, we all have now more platforms than ever that we've got to keep track of and monitor. And you've got to really realize, who your audience is and how they prefer to listen, so that you can, communicate in ways that are effective for how they listen. And then a lot of it is just realizing that, most companies are not set up to help their staff navigate this stuff. You just have more human concerns than you otherwise might. You start to realize how many of your people you work with have, elderly family that live with them or that rely on them. Usually you're thinking about kids in school, and now there's no camps, and there's all these other things that you want to try and, be there for, plus just the general abnormality of having to spend as much time in your place as everybody's having to do right now. So, we've learned a lot about, trying to be a more self-aware and responsive organization as to the needs of our staff and employees, and that's requires a lot of listening, and sometimes it requires listening without being asked to listen. So that's what we've been kind of focused on, and that's what we've kind of learned about ourselves.
I've seen multiple ways in which just working within this organization that we've stretched ourselves and have grown and have adapted and have made some adjustments. Virtual cocktail hour like this is one of the ways that we've tried to maintain communication with our fans and our business partners. We're going to be launching some virtual summer workouts for the Grizzlies youth camps that are going to be coming up in the coming weeks. We've talked about the voting initiatives and things of that nature that we're doing. The on-the-court product is just one major component of what the Grizzlies are all about, but there's so many different other departments and outreach areas of engagement that we've been able to grow and learn through. And it's been an honor to be here, to be able to serve with you in that process as well. To go back to one last question that we have from our partner client list, you touched on a little bit of the rivalry that this division sort of is creating just organically with where everyone is in the roster. There's been a lot of talk about the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. We've seen these two teams match up on MLK weekend a couple of times now. Alvin Gentry comes up and does our clinics as well, and we do the same thing. Just how unique. Both teams, both franchises are located right off the banks of the Mississippi. A lot of music tradition, great food, great diversity of culture. Just these two teams, two dynamic young rosters as well, led by John Morant and obviously the first pick, Zion Williamson. How promising does that potential rivalry tends to be going forward?
It's one of those things where we've actually had some conversations with New Orleans in the recent past, sort of before all this started to materialize organically, of how do we cultivate this, right? Because this should be a natural rivalry. We've never played each other in the playoffs, which is where most, rivalries are fostered in the NBA, but that ends up being, a function of circumstance. So it really is encouraging and exciting that, this might sort of organically take place. You start to see it already a little bit with our fan base. I remember we had a game down in New Orleans. This must be about 4 or 5 years ago, that ended up being like the Friday night or Saturday night of spring break. And there must have been 500 Grizzlies fans who had driven down to New Orleans for that, first weekend of spring break who, attended that game. And there's always, Grizzlies, Memphis area students who are down at, some of the universities down around there, Tulane, LSU, some of the others. So I love the notion that this is going to happen. I love the idea that, our fans are going to look to, caravan down there if there's opportunities and be a road team voice in a hostile arena, and understand that, that's going to come back the other way too, right? the notion that there could be an organic rivalry between these two cities, who are the two smallest markets in the NBA and who have so much in common yet are so fundamentally different. I think that's one of the really exciting developments from a fan perspective, because it's been a minute since we had that sense of these guys are coming to town. I want to beat them because they're the guys I want to beat more than anybody else, right? Like,
right.
It doesn't happen that often in the NBA the way it does, in some other sports, because of just the way the calendar works out a little bit.
I mean, I'll say it for you. Blake Griffin isn't around in LA to beat his ass anymore, and we don't have Oklahoma City in the same fashion in terms of that rivalry. So I'll take that one for you. I'll take that punch right there.
I remember. But what's funny is I remember you were up here for ESPN covering the Memphis versus everybody game.
Yes.
Against Golden State, and I remember reading your write-up.
That was my lead. That was my lead.
Actually understands Memphis. Like, he's the first ESPN guy who really gets Memphis when he's here, because he understood what Memphis versus everybody meant. Everybody else was like, there were writers from Golden State who were like, they don't know how to spell. Y'all don't get it. So.
Oh man, it was fun. Those were fun times. So that was a great series and a great run during that spring as well too. So I mean, listen, man, this has been great. This has been fun, and we're running short on time here, but I wanted to make sure again to give a plug to our presenting sponsor, SomethingInked.com. Obviously, I'm going to be announcing who won this OGO travel bag in a few more minutes. But Jason, if you got time for 2 more quick questions for me, and then we can wrap up, that'll be great. As we move closer towards the proposed potential restart in Orlando, what's been reported out there is obvious. What can our local fan base expect? How can they continue to support this team? What are some of the ways that we're thinking about that as we move towards the campus environment in Orlando to play the proposed 8 games and then continue on to the playoffs from there? How can our local fans and our regional fans continue to support and engage one another while they're doing so?
No, I appreciate that. We know here how much of a civic experience the playoffs are and how much of a communal experience it is. And, it's going to be hard to recreate that this year, but we're going to try our best. So we're working on a bunch of things that, hopefully can be a little bit tangible, a little bit experiential in this otherwise, virtual environment that can, generate that sense of enthusiasm and support that, we got so used to seeing, every spring in the playoffs here. So we're hopeful to be able to do some of that. A lot of it will be virtual and digital. A lot of it will be content-based. We're trying to come up with, some unique and great content that we can, generate from, in Orlando as well as from here and in our coverage, and just, providing some looks behind the scenes. But really, it's going to be a lot of our fans, kind of kicking in, and our sponsors and our partners and everybody trying to, do a little bit more to get engaged, because, that's sort of the environment we're in, where, it's going to be a little bit less organic than it might otherwise, like coming downtown before the game and hanging out after the game. But, we'll try and do the best we can to create a digital community around the experience and, a little bit a tangible effort and see what we can do on those fronts. We do expect the seeding games to be broadcast on our RSN. And so, that'll be great to have the normal Fox Sports Southeast coverage. There's some chance that maybe a couple of those games get picked up. Some of those games may be played during the daytime as well, so there may be some unusual start times there. So we'll have to figure all that stuff out, but we're looking for ways to try and make it a civic experience like the playoffs in Memphis always are.
Mm-hmm. And to that same point, Jason, how are we handling sort of the work from home situation with the pandemic, and what does it mean for other events that have been here? We're constantly updating our board with postponements or cancellations or rescheduling for concerts. How has that process gone in terms of that, plus ticket renewal information for fans who may have had tickets to the remaining Grizzlies games?
Yeah, so we got out to everybody as fast as we could. There was some difficulty in the sense that we had to wait for league approval to do certain things, or we have to wait for certain time frames with promoters and with respect to certain shows and how that's handled. We're at a point now for our season ticket holders where they should, call their account exec if they have not yet renewed, because we're applying the credit from the last 8 games of last year towards next year's renewal. So it basically gives you 20% off of next year's tickets essentially. The concert business is going to be interesting. Like Live Nation is working really hard. All the promoters are working really hard to figure out when and how to bring back shows and tours. So I don't want to commit to timetables because obviously there's a lot of variables there. But we had the best year we've had in a while at FedEx Forum in terms of numbers of shows and events this past year, even though it got cut off early. We've been increasing the amount of events we've had in concerts, and people have been showing in bigger numbers than they, historically have in Memphis, which is great. So we're optimistic that when we're allowed to have those again, and when promoters are promoting shows again, that we will continue to provide, first-rate entertainment at FedEx Forum.
And as we wrap up, Jason, what are some of the immediate next steps you can share with our business partners, our community partners, and our fans in terms of what's next that the Grizzlies are focusing on as an organization as we try to get prepared for what could be coming in Orlando?
We are, we're trying to get better at this, exactly what we're doing now, right? Connect with everybody virtually and hopefully a sincere and meaningful way. We are, on the basketball side, super hard at work. The rumor is that when the NBA protocols come down, they're going to be over 100 pages long. We're preparing to get that document and scour it, abide by it. Do that. The official workout document was 16 pages, so it's not surprising, but it shows how serious everybody's taking this, right? And we're going to continue to take it seriously as an organization. We're going to look for, we've always prided ourselves on being innovative. So we're looking to try and come up with some, new ways to engage and connect with people, in small groups and in large groups, so that, we can keep that fan connectivity together and that sense of, being a part and related to this team and this organization as best we can. So there's a lot of good ideas that are in the works. And I think, one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing is I think we're going to see some innovation on the broadcast side down in Orlando. So, with no fans in the building, it's giving a lot of really talented TV broadcasters an opportunity to think about how they layer in new elements into a broadcast. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm really excited to do it and see it. I know in the past, sometimes when new camera angles come in or whatnot, everybody goes, I'm not, I want to see it the way I've always seen it, but this is going to be an atypical circumstance. I think, there'll be a real opportunity to kind of experience the game a little bit differently, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. So there's going to be a lot we'll all be figuring out and learning together, and I think that'll be part of the sort of communal fan experience. Is we'll all be going through this as the first time, in our own way. You're so used to having like your core fans and then people who kind of layer on. But even for the diehards who are on this call, who are with us through thick and thin, we'll all be watching a broadcast for the first time without fans on July 30th, going, all right, this is new, And, so.
Yeah. And lastly, I'll ask you the same question I get from time to time out in the community. I live with Grizzly season ticket holders and fans. You run into them safely, socially distanced, obviously, of course. At church, at the grocery store, they're always asking. We are going to get back in FedEx Forum at some point, right? And I know the hope and the plan. This virus has no time frame, but at the end of the day, safety protocols are a priority. But eventually, I know we're all operating with hope and expectation that there will be light at the end of the tunnel and we can cheer for the Grizzlies right here in this arena right next to me. I'm not speaking for you, but I'm assuming that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've done an enormous amount of work on, all fronts behind the scenes, and we're all learning every day about this, but, there's an enormous amount that of ground that we've been covered, and it's amazing how much information was actually kind of existing out there, and then how much we've all learned and are applying. So, there will come a time where we'll be confident that we'll be able to provide a safe and engaging and fun environment for everybody back at FedEx Forum.
We're looking forward to it as well. Jason, thank you so much for your time. I want to thank SomethingInked. I want to thank all of our partners, our MVP 365 members, fans, for joining us on this virtual summer cocktail hour. Before I go, though, Jason, we got to give this bag away, right? Or can I just go ahead and walk off? We got to give away? Well, the winner, let me say this, the lucky winner of the Grizzlies and SomethingInked co-branded OGO bag is Carl Schledwitz from Monogram Foods. Carl Schledwitz from Monogram Foods. So this will be your bag. You can take this home. This is exactly the kind of luggage that the players take on the road with them when they go to road games. I see it because I'm right there with them traveling as well. My bags don't look as good as this one. A representative from our company will be in contact with you for arranging how to pick up this bag. But congratulations to Carl for winning this from Monogram Foods. And we want to thank you for joining us. It's been a phenomenal hour. Jason gave us so much information and insight as we push forward. Keep it locked on all of our coverage. Grind City Media, Grizzlies.com is your one-stop shop for everything going on with the team, from the basketball court all the way up through everything that we're doing with Grizz Gaming and all of our other entities as well. Again, I want to thank you guys for joining us for the Summer Virtual Cocktail Hour, and stay tuned for information on the next one coming up soon.